Good evening, everyone. The time is slightly after 7, so if you can all grab drinks and maybe a cup of coffee and take your seats so that we can get started. Thank you. Welcome to tonight's staff meeting regarding the support systems that the service will be implementing to assist young Kynan in his communication development. We'll be discussing who the team is behind the scenes and how we got to the final decision of which practice or strategies that we would like to implement for him. Firstly, I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the Garangarang and Tirablang Bunda people as the traditional custodians of the land upon which we meet tonight. We gather tonight in this special place to continue our learning journey together. We would like to pay our respects to both the elders past, present and future and acknowledge their spiritual connection to this country. Thank you. Thank you all for attending tonight. I know it's late, however, I do believe that everyone will benefit from tonight's discussion and hopefully will be willing and able to assist Kynan throughout this next chapter. I'd now like to introduce the team who have been working tirelessly and collaboratively over the past few months to establish the best intervention tool to support Kynan in his language and communication development. Alongside myself, we've had Scott, Kynan's additional teacher, Mr. and Mrs. Baker, Kynan's parents to those who don't know, and Jenny, our speech therapist, who has been working with Kynan over the past few months and who's been a huge support in order to get this meeting up and running. I wish to reassure everyone that this was not an easy process. However, we believe was a necessary one, which was developed using an evidence-based practices and the decision-making framework, which guided the systems in which we followed in order for us to reach a decision. This decision, we believe, would be best suited to Kynan's individual situation. The process consisted of many months of observations, anecdotal documentations, interviews, collaboration meetings between the teachers and Kynan's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Baker, as well as occasionally with our speech therapist, Jenny, as well. We also needed to consider the research, professional guidance from Jenny, the speech therapist, and using our own professional judgments also. Although tonight we will be discussing how we got to our decision, we shall continue through implementing the intervention tool whilst adapting and modifying as deemed necessary. We will also be continuously evaluating as we go along whilst monitoring and observing Kynan's progress. We will ensure that we make the required adjustments and modifications and upskill staff through continued training as Kynan's skill sets increase. After our initial observations and anecdotal reports, we had to discuss our concerns with Mr. and Mrs. Baker, Kynan's parents. Why did we consult his parents first, you might ask? Well, as educators, we are all aware that using our service philosophy, having a family-centred approach within our facility, where a parent or guardian is a child's first teacher, collaboration and desired outcomes are achieved when families, teachers and specialists work together. Rick and Matthews in 2014 also identified that parents are aware of many external factors. These also need to be taken into consideration as they may affect significantly their own impact to support their individual child within the home. This includes, but again is not limited to, establishing their main goals for Kynan, ensuring that the intervention strategy is cost effective for both the early learning facility and Kynan's family at home, that it's safe to use for Kynan and the family and is a good fit for both the Bakers' busy work schedule and within the individual dynamics of their family home. Taking all this into consideration, clients' values are incredibly important if any intervention is going to be effective, as any approach needs to be consistent across all domains within the child's environments. This includes daycare, home, and within the therapy sessions as well. Scott and I therefore deemed that working alongside Mr. and Mrs. Baker throughout this journey and assisting them with their personal journey as co-interventionists was, in this case, essential. So helping them help Kynan additionally helps us. Whilst using the decision-making framework, as a panel in our own field of teachers, specialists, speech therapists, parents, we were forced to ask questions. Questions regarding which interventions were available, which ones had successes previously, which intervention strategies were we able to access, and which ones were we most comfortable with being able to implement effectively. Together, we discussed our evidence and reports from previous observations and documentation we had currently on Kynan. We discussed the various observations during meetings, including those taken during therapy sessions and one-on-one set activities. In relation to how they went, we discussed these also, how Kynan engaged with various toys, certain activities, within which environments did this happen, indoors, outdoors, in a closed room, in an open room, and with which people. Was it males that it was best suited to, females, a stronger personality, a more firm and assertive person? These are all things that were discussed throughout the meetings in order for us to move forward. We asked questions relating to the family's values, their belief systems, and discussed concerns, their fears, hopes and dreams that Mr. and Mrs. Baker have for Kynan in the future. These are all really important key questions to be asking. After establishing the Bakers' desired goals and prospects for Kynan, we then considered which goals were most important through our research at this stage in Kynan's development for him to be able to function society. This is where we managed to agree that communication, which is Dickinson's identified as a core skill by Callahan 2014, was probably the most important, followed by social skills of sharing and self-help skills at this stage in his development. We are extremely fortunate in Queensland that a lack of knowledge regarding what to do is no longer a significant challenge for us. As a service provider, we have access to the research from both the National Autism Centre's National Standards Project and the National Professional Development Centre on Autism Spectrum Disorder. They've basically done the work for us. They've done the research and have managed to put a nice list of valid treatments and interventions which can now be implemented effectively by teachers, parents and therapists quite simply, easily and effectively. As a collaborative team, we use the research from these services to establish a short list of possible choices which may be suitable for Kynan's communication development. Okay, so now the fun part. What have we chosen? Picture Exchange Communication System, also known as PECS, which some of you may have heard before, is one of the top choices and is the intervention strategy that we as a collaborative group have decided would best suit Kynan's communication development at this stage. We did consult some additional outside personnel, including PECS Australia, to assist us in regards to some additional questions and reservations that we had regarding the implementation and training of this program. I'm not sure if many of you are aware, but PECS is very costly and requires educators and parents to complete formal training. It's not something you can just pick up and attempt to implement on a whim. You need that formal training, and it's consistent training as you go along. To have access to specific resources, ensuring that they're consistent across all of his settings. So making sure that we're using the same things within the service as he's using at home. So the same pictures for the same things. This will be funded, we've decided, using the service's additional service inclusion plan funding and utilising the funding available through Kynan's NDIS plan for the Bakers. The Bakers, Scott and I will be attending the next training session, which is to be held in Brisbane next month, so that we can prepare for the implementation of PECS Stage 1 with Kynan. So we will not be here on premises at that stage. PECS Australia encouraged us to use the candidate selection tool, which is shown here on the screen, which assisted us to deem whether this was an appropriate tool to be able to use for Kynan specifically, or if it was not. Going down the questionnaires that we found, we had decided that this was definitely a suitable and effective choice for Kynan at this stage. This tool has also enabled us to identify some SMART goals for Kynan and for the service, both short and long term, in relation to his overall language and communication development, which are identified in Kynan's individual learning plan and within the service's inclusion support plan, which is available in the files on Owner app. Evidence, evidence, evidence. Something that we all know too well. We can't just pick something up and implement it and give it a try because up the road's doing the same thing, or we had Joe Blow from down the road doing something that they said was pretty good, because every situation is different. So looking at the evidence of the various available interventions was an important part of our decision-making process, where we needed to consider the expert opinions, single case experimental designs, cohort studies, randomized cohort trials. Numerous systematic reviews were also taken into consideration. This took an extensive amount of time to ensure that there was no bias shown regarding the available intervention, which was slightly hindered as Jenny, our speech therapist, had also done the training previously in regards to PECS, and she's been implementing this intervention strategy for a number of years. However, we didn't want this to be the sole reason for selecting the chosen intervention. We wanted to make sure that this was going to be purposely fit for us in regards to Kynan at this time, and in regards to the funding and things that are available. We have also identified that there are other children who may be non-verbal now or in the future that may also benefit from PECS program also, which is fantastic because it doesn't mean it's just for one single purpose. We can actually utilize it. According to KidSense 2020, PECS was first developed in 1985 by Andy Bondi and Laurie Frost, and they've also got a website which goes through a lot of what is PECS as well, which is available on the previous slides. The primary goal of PECS is to teach functional communication. That's the primary goal. At one time, and still today, there are some people who are opposed to using PECS as well as sign language to teach children with autism to communicate. They tend to argue that the methods would actually hurt the development of spoken language. However, there have been several studies consistently showing that PECS actually help people develop verbal language, because we're not doing the picture cards and cues without verbal language. We're doing it in consultation with. So eventually you would hope that that child would pick up on that language and that identification. Research has shown that some learners using PECS also develop speech, which is fantastic, and that's one of the key things that we would like to hope for Kynan, that this is going to work. Additionally, some people may transition from PECS to a speech generating device, which in the 21st century, speech generating devices are being implemented within schools as well. So having PECS and being able to utilize PECS and identify picture cues and things like that will actually assist him with his transition to school later on in a year or in 2 years' time, which is fantastic, and it's a good stepping stone. The body of research supporting the effectiveness of PECS as an evidence-based practice is substantial and continues to expand, with more than 150 research articles from all over the world. It was also listed as an improved evidence-based practice in the National Standards Projects for both Phase 1 in 2009 and again in Phase 2 in 2012. So this was enough evidence for us to say, yes, it's a great strategy. There's lots of things behind it. It's multi-purposable, multi-usable. So let's give that a try. Okay, so we've looked at our client, so looking at Kynan and his family as well, and the reasons behind that. We've looked at asking questions and making sure that we're looking at the evidence as well, which is great for applying the decision-making framework. They're key components. Now we're moving into practice. What does it look like in regards to the PECS? Adapting our practices and implementing practice. As stated before, in order to be able to implement PECS, you need to be doing the formal training for that. So PECS goes through various phases. There are 6 different phases at different levels as seen on the screen. I'm not going to go through them all in great detail, but the first one would be how to communicate, followed by Phase 2, distance and persistence. Phase 3 is picture discrimination, sentence structure, answering questions and commenting. I've also attached there's some YouTube clips in regards to getting started, how to get started using PECS during phase 1, and there's a demonstration there on what it looks like. We might have a look at that towards the end if we have time. And what is PECS? There's a nice information leaflet about that as well. Okay, moving on to adapting practice. What happens when it all goes pear-shaped? The child's just not motivated, resisting to hand over any of the prompts or listen to guidance, getting frustrated, having tantrums, struggling to maintain attention to task, and unable to match physical objects as well. Do we just give up? No, not at all. We need to really look at our educational planning cycles. So making sure that we're planning, implementing, reflecting, evaluating, and then replanning and continuously following through as a holistic view. There's no point in doing one thing without the other. It is holistic. There's plenty that can be done. There's things that we can look at to improve the learning of picture exchange communication, looking at motivation, looking at different versions, changing the objects, moving to real objects from pictures. There's a variety of different strategies that are available. We can also look at improving it through keeping items out of reach, sabotaging, which is quite a fun one, which is where we can complete part of an activity so the child then has to request something rather than being lazy and expecting it. We can play, we can role model, we can do it during snack time and use food as a motivator. So there's a whole variety of things that we can do in regards to adapting the particular practice. There's also a lot of books, a lot of information online, so looking onto the PECS website and also looking into Autism Australia, there is plenty of resources there to be able to assist with that. But the key is to evaluate, reflect, replan, evaluate, and consistently move through. What have we done? What did we try? Did it go well? Did it not? What can we change or make it better for next time? Very key components in regards to that holistic programming cycle. Okay, moving into the implementing of practice. Whilst implementing the program of PECS, the program teachers should consistently observe and ensure adequate documentation is being taken at all times in relation to behaviours, success measures, change in interest, and a variety of other things. And when necessary, make those required adjustments as we spoke about previously. You need to do the training. There is a variety of different training depending on which level you're at. There's PECS overview, PECS level 1 training, level 2 training, transitioning to PECS to speech generating devices. That one there is a good and interesting one as a stepping stone, and the pyramid approach to teleservices, enhancing learning, and PECS at home is also available. Before you start the training, if you did want to get started, we can look at completing the PECS reinforcer sampling, which can be conducted prior to the training itself. The reinforcer sampling is an informal inventory of items that are of particular interest to the learner. Several options for completing reinforcing sampling are for usually with children with limited communication skills. So you can gather a selection of items that may be a favourite to the child, and the items can be identified by asking caregivers, so asking the parents or the main teachers in the classroom, and observing that individual over a period of time. You can present the learner with pairs of choices, so giving them an item option of 2, and being sure to match each item at least once with the other items being sampled. So making sure that you're trying to establish which one is more favourable than the other. Document the items chosen most often, least often, or that produce a notable response. So maybe the learner tastes something and spits it out, or he throws an item after choosing it, doesn't really want it. They are all things that you can do whilst you are waiting for that training, but training is definitely an essential part prior to implementing this practice.